Do you foresee any changes to the signaling system in terms of adding more signals in the future?
So I'm like more like somewhat involved in the conversation. I have like a seat at the table, like a third row seat at the table, not the front row seat at the table. I would not be surprised if the number of signals increased. I wouldn't be surprised if the number of signals stays the same for longer. So there's a lot of discussion going on, and we residency program directors, like we get along pretty well. We play well in the sandbox. I think everyone wants it to work best for all the residency programs. If I had to guess, I bet you it goes up in the next few years, but I can't be totally confident. I will tell you the advice I give to people who are applying. You want to be somewhat strategic. So I think the notion of like reach programs and safety programs is kind of stupid, um, because it doesn't always work out that way. If you think of programs or safety program and you treat them like that, it's not even a possibility because they know you think that. Um, but you do know that some programs are more competitive than others. So take your gold signals, and 5 is not divisible by 3, but whatever, 2, 2, and 1. 1/3 you might want to give to quote unquote reach programs. 1/3 programs that are just totally in your wheelhouse. And your advisors can help you figure that out. And then maybe 1 to a quote unquote safety program, because a gold signal to that program make them feel loved. That could be like basically your way of guaranteeing or almost guaranteeing you match. And then do the same with the silvers. Understanding that the gold signals are going to have a much higher yield in terms of interviews you get. And a gold signal does not guarantee an interview. 40% of people who sent me a gold signal didn't get an interview.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of conversation on these said forums also that people are saying, "Oh, I wasted a gold signal," or "Oh, I wasted silver signal," or "Oh, I should have gotten an interview because I sent them a gold signal." And I think it is important to kind of assess your competitiveness as an applicant and let applicants know that just because you send a program a signal doesn't mean that they are guaranteed to send you an interview.
Increasingly programs, ours included, are trying to put a lot more information out there. We have forums. We participate in a forum with a lot of New York City programs, and we're very upfront about how we look at applications. So we do a holistic review of applications, but being the only program in Manhattan that considers people who aren't from United States-based allopathic medical schools, we actually have very strict cutoffs for step scores and class ranking. And I'm very upfront about that. So a lot of the people who sent me a gold who didn't get an interview, if they had attended our forum, they would have seen that we have this cutoff and they didn't hit it and they could have used it more wisely.
Mhm. How would you recommend preparing for interviews?
Well, you definitely don't want to be super anxious and you want to give people a chance to get to know you. Some people have an easier time talking to strangers, to new people. I mean, that's going to be a leg up when you interact with someone and they're warm, they're interested, it goes a long way. So if that requires a beta blocker, whatever you have to do, make sure that you have more of a sense of excitement than anxiety. It's not a test. It's really not a test. If I could tell you the best way to think about interviews, think about speed dating. It's more like speed dating than anything else because we're trying to find, I mean, it's called the match, right? We're trying to find a good match and we're looking for people who are going to fit into our program. If you walk away from an interview and just like left a sour feeling, that's a great interview because you got a great feel for that program. You don't want to go. That's perfect. Your goal should not be to rack up as many places that are going to rank you high. Don't do that. If you have a great connection, I mean, you'd be surprised. Like there's a good chance, better chance than you think that you're going to match there. It's like if you go speed dating, there's someone you really connected with. That's probably the person you have the best chance of like them selecting you for like a second date or something. A safety program with which you show very little interest during your interview is no longer a safety program. It becomes a non-option. Increasingly over the last 3 years, we've seen people with stellar applications who don't. And I'm sure they terrify all of the people in the class below theirs. You hear about their step score and their class ranking and they didn't match. Oh my God. It's the interview. And it's not that they did badly during the interview. I will tell you what I think happens quite a bit. There are varying degrees of being disinterested. For all those young men out there, don't be the bro who manspreads and is too cool for school. I spot you in the interview. I say this person's not going to match, and then you don't. Don't be too cool for school. You're not here yet. You need to be humble, modest, and enthusiastic. Also, there's like the type A personality who I can tell we're just not high on their list. But guess what? You thought you were a great applicant in the places that you really wanted to go, didn't rank you high enough. You thought maybe I was a safety program, but you showed me during the interview you weren't really enthusiastic, so you were never going to match in my program. So you want to show enthusiasm, humility, enthusiasm, and try to really find a way to be yourself. If you have a like story that you think that your application speaks to, try to be strategic about if you can get the conversation kind of to the themes that you really want to get across. Don't be rude, don't be aggressive, but you can find ways to weave it in. Oh yeah, speaking of meaningful experiences, you might have noticed in my personal statement I wrote about like experience with my grandmother who we had to take care of when she got very sick and how that try to bring it back. Like, when you see politicians on TV, they always try to hit their talking points no matter what the question is. You can do that diplomatically.
Next question will be about pre and post interview communication. So, is it recommended to communicate your interest in a program that you are planning to rank highly after your interview? And what about letters of interest or letters of intent? Do they matter?
So first of all, letters of interest and letters of intent have a very specific meaning now that I don't think they had a few years ago. So be careful. I got an email from someone saying letter of interest, and they had already interviewed. Now I get a million emails, and I think I just saw a letter of interest. I like to be communicative and not ignore people who are reaching out. So I think I banged out a response like, we're still reviewing applications. And then he wrote back, no, I interviewed and I really liked the program. I was like, oh, this is a letter of intent. So make sure that when you put it in the subject line, letter of interest means I'm interested in interviewing. Letter of intent means I've interviewed and now it's my intent to communicate. I'm going to rank your program highly or something. They can matter. So letters of interest, so meaning trying to get those interviews, they used to be much, much more effective prior to signals. So my old strategy, I had a strategy for trying to get signals when there were no signals. I would get 2,000 applications. Now, as you can imagine, in 2,000 applications, there's a solid 500 who were amazing and another 500 like we'd probably interview. That's 10 times as many people as like we can reasonably interview. So how do you try to make them high yield? I would maybe select 50, 60 people for the first round of interviews. Then I would screen every single application and flag it with interview if calls or no interview. And then I would wait for the letters of interest to come in. And if someone sent a letter of interest and they go to their application and I already flagged it, give an interview, boom, they got an interview. And that was how I filled 2/3 to 3/4 of all of my interview spots. It was my way of saying, if you don't email me, you're not that interested, I guess. Now, I would get maybe like 150 emails over the course of the year. Now I get 500. So they've lost all of their utility. And I think people are so anxious because they're getting fewer interviews because of the signals. That's how they're supposed to work. That they're really sending a lot of letters of interest. I've heard some program directors say that they just delete them immediately, don't even look at them. I don't do that, but whereas they came off as sincere before, now they come off as desperate and insincere, so they're not as useful. Okay, now let's fast forward to letters of intent. You've interviewed, you want to express your intent to be resident there. I I hate getting an email saying that they're going to rank my program highly. I hate that. Because you know what highly is not? It's
Number one.
not number one. I always use the joke, I've been married for almost 20 years now, very happily. If my wife had told me like after our courtship, I just want you to know that you're one of my favorite suitors. That means like she's gonna marry somebody else. Like that hurts. So I would say email your number one. If you use the terminology letter of intent, if I recall last year, that tended to look like they were ranking number one, but that was a little bit ambiguous. I don't like the highly emails at all. I don't talk to every single residency program director, but a lot of them feel the same way I do. So email your number one. I would say it shouldn't really impact your ranking, but it probably does. I've always said it doesn't really impact our ranking here. There was this one dude who like had great timing and did it right before we finalized our rank list. And it made me look at his application one more time. So it wasn't the email. I didn't rank him higher because he told us he was ranking us number one. I looked at his application again. I was like, I really liked that guy. Maybe we were scoring more like tough earlier in the season. We all talked about like, yeah, we think we actually like him more than the actual interview score he got. So in that one instance, it actually really helped him. I don't think it's fair if you get ranked higher because you send in a letter of intent, but I know for some programs it does make a difference.
I have one follow-up question to this discussion. Actually, I think I can think of two, but first one is if a program says, do not email thank you letters, do not email any communication, should applicants take that seriously?
Yes, like yes, in a sense. They mean it. So it's not like they're testing you to see who actually still sends a letter. I would trust them and take it seriously and trust that you don't have to send a letter. Um, if you send a letter, I don't think they're like, oh, this person can't follow instructions. We know that many of you just feel it's really important to show your gratitude. We don't ask for letters or emails. We're not very specific about it, but no one's dinged for not sending one. Um, so yeah, take them seriously, but you're not going to be hurt for sending it anyway. That's not to say you should.
Good. I think a lot of med students, we think, everything's a trick question or some sort of trick. So, just clearing that up.
If they're trying to trick you, you don't want to go there.
That's true. Very, very true. The second thing I wanted to discuss that wasn't a specific question, but I guess in thinking about letters of intent, letters of interest, and interviews, it's kind of similar in that even just because you send a letter of intent or interest and someone else may have gotten an interview, that doesn't mean that you are going to get an interview. And that's the same thing with the signaling and getting interviews too. Would you say that's kind of similar?
Absolutely. So back in the day prior to the signals, when I really used those emails, those letters of interest, I had already filtered every single application. I made a promise to myself that if you send me an interview, I'll take another look at your application. But for the most part, like you were already kind of in or out. That email just basically now had me open to see if you are a person I deemed was like, going to get an interview if they contacted me. So yeah, don't have your feelings hurt. Some PDs aren't reading any of them. Someone might get an interview after sending one, but they might have something about their application that was appealing to that program.
Right. And I think a lot of the listeners who will be listening to this podcast are also the people who are looking at the Reddit spreadsheets, the people who are looking at the Discord. And, we just wanted to discuss this to clear the air that every applicant is different. Please do not compare yourself to another applicant who may have received an interview after a letter of intent or letter of interest, or who may have signaled and things like that. You are your own individual person, an individual applicant, and, everyone wants to shine in their own way.
I cut myself off years ago from reading any of these forums. Obviously, you want to see if people are talking about your program, but the reason I cut myself off is it was driving me crazy because there are so many opinions. Now, you're getting opinions from people applying to anesthesia residency, which means they don't know what they're talking about. There are so many bad opinions. I think it's great that there are forums and people can use them to communicate information that's helpful. But people who have very, very strongly held views, the more strongly held the view is, the more likely it is to be incorrect based on my experience of perusing some of these.
Right. I agree. It can be very tough for mental health when you're comparing yourself to strangers who you absolutely do not know and who absolutely, post the best things about themselves. So I am a victim of that too. And I just had to kind of like dissociate myself during fourth year. And I do recommend other med students to dissociate themselves too. The next question I would like to ask that was submitted, it is, do you recommend ranking based on interest in the program or probability of getting in? I can think of the answer, but I want to definitely hear yours.
This is absolutely crazy making to hear the question. Um, I cannot emphasize enough. The match, like the match algorithm won the Nobel Prize. I mean, it is really a wonderful algorithm. I know you're anxious about applying, and there are so many feelings you're having that are impacting what you think about the match. It's the best thing in the world. It protects you. There was all this chicanery that used to go on with people being taken advantage of before the match existed. All you have to do is rank the programs in the order in which you want to go. If a program's your number one in your mind, that's your number one. The way that it works is, let's say that you decide you're shooting for the moon and you're going to one of the top Ivy League programs on the East Coast. You love it. It's your number one. Let's say you never had any chance of getting there. They're going to fill. It's not going to be an option. You can just imagine it disappears, and your number two is your number one. It is no less your number one now than if you had placed it as number one before, once the other program is no longer a possibility for you. You can't game the system. Don't take any advice that you hear about how to rank other than what I am telling you right now from anyone. And they're going to tell you that they're very smart. They're not. They're going to have a very, very strongly held conviction that they know what they're talking about. The stronger their conviction, the least likely they are to be correct. Rank in the order in which you want to go, and you will be the best off.
Yeah, I think you can't make that any clearer. So if anyone's listening, rewind, re-listen, rank in the order that you want to go. I think that when I was trying to learn more about the match process and like trying to tell my parents and explaining it to them, oh my gosh, it's so complicated, but it's supposed to work out in your favor. I watched those NRMP YouTube videos so many times explaining the match process, but I'm like, at the end, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to rank in my order where I want to go, regardless of how I felt, the programs felt about me. And I heard it from Dr. Mahoney himself.
Well, it is complicated, but it's complicated so it doesn't have to be complicated at all for you. It is completely simple for you and for me as a residency program director. We do the same thing. I don't try to game it. We don't try to rank people higher because they have a higher probability of coming here. Like that all happens in the front, and we try to interview people who have a higher probability of coming here, or else if you interview 200 people who want to be on the West Coast, I'm in New York, guess what? We're not going to fill. But we only have to rank the applicants in the order in which we think they're going to fit in the best. And then you only have to rank in the order in which you prefer to go. And it'll work out great.
The next question we kind of touched upon, but I think this might be helpful for people, once again, who might be international medical graduates or who don't have a home program. How do you seek out mentorship when you don't have a particular research topic or interest, or just want a particular mentor to be a sounding board? I guess this person is talking about research specifically, but it can be generalized too.
I mean, it depends on the context in which you're getting your medical education. I was fortunate. I went to Mount Sinai School of Medicine. I've been stuck here for a long time, obviously. I liked it a lot. We had so many resources. They had forums for you to find mentors. They had different like websites with lists of people depending on your interest. Now, other medical schools don't have those kinds of resources. You can reach out to program directors elsewhere for advice. Let's say that you are at a medical school, you're a first-year student, and you don't have a bunch of great resources. Use your first summer. Do a summer research elective at a different institution. Um, and that will give you mentorship, even if you don't have a school that provides a lot of great mentorship.
Um, I have another question that I just thought of that wasn't submitted, but I have seen a lot on forums and stuff. How important is it for applicants to go to the ASA annual meeting or other subspecialty meetings? Do you think that the networking opportunities provided there are impactful for, the application process or perhaps career development? Or do you feel like it's kind of mandatory for a student to go, especially given the expensive price it is to travel?
Absolutely not mandatory. I will give you an anecdote that is the absolute exception to the rule. I was at the ASA in Chicago, and I met a young man who just came across with such a winning demeanor, turned around, called my coordinator to give him an interview immediately, ended up coming here, did his fellowship here. Now he's one of our prize attendings, and I thank God he put himself in front of me at the ASA PD meet and greet in Chicago. Absolute exception to the rule. That's a great story, and for him it worked out, but that's not very common. Now, there's been a lot of debate about the meet and greet within the ASA.
Mhm.
There were many changes that were made last year, some of which included discouraging program directors from going and only having representatives. Actually, a lot of program directors, I'm on the program PD advisory board or advisory group for the ASA, and a lot of PDs within that group didn't like that. They find it to be very useful for their program. They like meeting people. They want to be there. So I heard from program directors there was a lot of utility for them. PDs from some of the newer, smaller programs especially wanted a chance to meet people and have them talk to them, maybe get them interested in applying to their program. But there are program directors who find a lot of utility. I enjoy it personally. It is a madhouse. I like meeting people. Now, is it dramatically increasing the odds of people getting interviews? Probably not.
Yeah.
So definitely not mandatory. Maybe useful, but you might decide that it's useful for you insofar as you get like a better feel because you'll have maybe residents there. A good program will have some residents there. And you get to talk to them. We have a lot of people who come and say, "Hey, I'm interviewing you next month." And it's like, "Oh, great to meet you early." And then I say, "But you should probably go talk to somebody else because we're going to talk to each other later." So maybe for getting a feel, but again, the signals are already out at that point. So it's not going to change how you use your signals. It'd be really great if the ASA happened in like August and then everyone can go to these meet and greets, but it doesn't. Um, it's up to you. I know if you think that you have a really, really weak application, hmm, I don't know if it's going to help you that much. Maybe there's some very brand new program that just opened, and maybe that program's going to be interested in giving you an interview, but it's probably not helping your chances that much.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of debate amongst med students about why the ASA changed the format of the meet and greet. And we have discussed this in our board of directors meetings. And it was ultimately to leave off the pressure of students feeling like they went to the event trying to secure an interview. It is strictly not a recruitment strategy or event, but it's strictly a meet and greet, get to know the program. And I think for also program directors, I believe I don't know if we actively discouraged program directors not to go, but we told them they didn't have to go or feel that they had to be present to, interact with students and not feel like, oh, I have to be there and people will be expecting an interview when we explicitly told students, do not go there expecting to be recruited or to be given an interview. Go there to show yourself and to learn more about programs. I guess I can ask you, what are some frequently asked questions that applicants come to you about?
It's signals. It's
Mm.
really signals. And actually, there's something I wanted to say earlier, which was, should I rank programs based on probability? Absolutely not. Should I use signals based on probability? Absolutely. So when you want to think about your chances of going somewhere, the point at which that should enter the equation of your strategy is with signals. So people are always asking about signals, but find a mentor, find a resource that you can use. I hope this Q&A session helps people. Um, but find some friendly anesthesia residency program director near you. And also, it gives you a good chance to get some FaceTime with a residency program director. It tells you a lot if someone's able, willing to reach out and share their time and information with you. Now, I'm a strong believer. One of the reasons I love the meet and greet is even if it's low yield for PDs, I really think we have a responsibility to do the best that we can to help people applying to anesthesia feel better, get better information. Um, it is competitive now, and it seems like a high mountain to get up to the top of, but we want to really try to make it as easy as possible. It shouldn't be another source of major stress for students.
So, Dr. Mahoney, last night we actually had our ASA post-match panel, and that was attended by or registered over 400 people registered for the event, which was way beyond what we had expected. So I think you reaching out and us recording this the day after that, and just seeing so much overlap in a lot of the questions that were asked, I think it will be really helpful for applicants. And I wish I had some sort. Well, actually, no. On the ASA website, there are a lot of resources to get advice about applying, get advice about the field of anesthesiology. So I really thank you for reaching out to us for us to record this podcast. And we look forward to hearing more from students about what questions they have about the process.
Well, thank you so much. I love all of the things that the ASA Medical Student Component does. The videos you guys have posted, I was interviewed years ago by another student. So those are all wonderful resources. Thank you for the work you put in. I'm very excited for you to finish this phase of your career and start as an anesthesia resident next year. Congratulations, you're going to a phenomenal program. And we maybe look forward to more collaboration in the future. So thank you.